In a recent story, there's been a strange UFO sighting. NASA satellite snaps an alien spacecraft that's supposedly bigger than Earth, and they found this thing near the sun. So an alien UFO, and you can kind of see it in this video here. Earth-sized craft spotted near sun, claims expert. So you can see it here. But it says an alien UFO has been photographed by a NASA satellite orbiting in the sun, a self-styled ET expert has outlandishly announced. So it says the NASA Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, or SOHO mission, is the U.S. Space Agency's method for learning about the sun's structure and solar atmosphere since it began orbiting our star more than 2 decades ago. The NASA Space Telescope has made innumerable breakthroughs, from understanding the sun's violent solar storms to monitoring its powerful magnetic fields. However, UFO hunter Scott Waring believes NASA SOHO has now made its most amazing discovery yet, spotting a huge alien spacecraft flying close to the star. Waring took to his etdatabase.com UFO blog to speculate about the dubious find. He wrote, quote, "At first, I thought the anomaly was just some sort of magma or solar material ejected from the sun, but it doesn't look like it. The object's shape looks too perfect for that. There seems to be right angles to it, resembling a modern-day arrowhead. There are just too many right angles present for it to be a naturally occurring object," end quote. So Waring proceeds to zoom out of the NASA image taken on July 24th, 2019 to get a better perspective of the solar anomaly, and it's right here. So you can see this zoomed in version here. Now, I guess you could sort of make out a shape of an arrowhead, but you got to keep in mind, this thing, whatever this is 10 times the size of the Earth. Any right angle that what we might be seeing at this on this very small representation probably isn't as right of an angle as we might expect if we were actually to see it full size. Just like, the Earth is not a perfect sphere. We have mountains, we have valleys, but if you look at the Earth from space, from far away from space, like say from the moon or something, it looks perfectly sphere. Just like the moon looks pretty spherical, but then when you look closer, you see a lot of craters and valleys and things like that. So here's a picture where you can kind of see it right there. It says this was taken from SOHO's EIT-195 camera, which presents the sun with a greenish filter. Knowing the sun's radius to be 695,510 kilometers, the alien life conspiracy theorist estimates the UFO to be at least 10 times the size of the Earth, and Waring thinks that constructing such enormous spaceship would be easily feasible for technologically advanced alien cultures. He wrote, quote, "Imagine you are an alien and you want to build an object bigger than planet Earth." So again, these supposed discoveries happen quite often. There's a lot of times where, somebody finds something on Mars or somebody finds some weird anomaly on the moon. And I'm not discounting any of this. It's just we don't have enough information to really go on to know what these things are. Do I believe that this is an actual constructed spacecraft flying near the sun that's 10 times the size of the Earth? No, I don't have a reason to believe that. That being said, I have no clue what it is. I have no clue. This could even be a piece of extra dimensional matter that is that's kind of poking through our dimension. There's a lot of things it could be, or it could be just a very strange, oddly shaped solar flare that had a picture of itself. It had a picture taken of it at just the right time where it has these odd shapes. We don't really know. We can't really say for sure, but Dr. Michael Heiser and I talked about UFOs in a 5 and 10 episode with Derek Gilbert, because there is a mystery to this whole UFO question. What should we be thinking about them? What are they? And according to the available evidence, what conclusions can we draw? Here's a clip from that interview. Watch this.
I think that primarily what we're dealing with is not hoaxes, is not misidentification of meteorological phenomena, things like that. I do tend to believe, and I think there's a really good circumstantial case to be made, that most of the time what people see is some sort of experimental craft. It's really part of the military-industrial complex, which takes you into not only national politics in this country, but also geopolitics, especially in the Cold War. And all of that, again, is demonstrable. It's fairly understandable. But there are sort of these cases on the periphery. that don't quite, line up with all of that. That there's just something that explanation, as fairly comprehensive as it might be, just doesn't quite cover. And so for me, I do leave on the table some sort of spiritual component, but even if everything was a human experimental craft, I would still look at the issue the same way, because this is a subject that we know from the document, evidence, official documents, not the ones that get leaked and become part of a conspiracy, but the real ones, that there were people, again, connected in high places in the government that saw the idea, the mythology, as it were, of aliens and extraterrestrials and alien visitation, a very useful tool in terms of not only propaganda and disinformation, but again, even more sinister areas about how to manipulate the thinking of a population. Well, when I come across things like that, to me, it's a very easy sort of connection to make with, well, if people are really doing this, could there be something even bigger behind it? In other words, could there be a connection to a supernatural intelligence that would want people to make other people think this, do that, behave a certain way? And so the facade and the portent really sort of runs the gamut. It allows the reader to think about all of the different buckets that this could fit into, but prodding them with the question of, on the one hand, our Christian faith could sustain an extraterrestrial reality, like a genuine one. But what's really a bigger problem is taking this subject and manipulating populations with it. And we could say, well, that people are doing that. Okay, I'm not arguing that. But what I'm asking people to think about is what's prompting those people to do that. And I think in some cases you can build a pretty good case, a circumstantial case, that there's really something more deeply sinister, more occultish, that's really behind a lot of this.
Now, Josh, one of the aspects of the ancient aliens hypothesis is that when the prophets of the Old Testament were looking at miraculous events, the chariots of fire that Elijah saw, or the wheel that opens up the book of Ezekiel, or the things that appear to be like wheels, invariably, the hosts of these programs will point to those and say, well, they just didn't know what they were looking at. Clearly, these were spacecraft, and they were dealing with aliens. In Cherubim Chariots, you address some of those things. For example, Ezekiel's wheel. What are those things really, or what was it?
Well, even that answer kind of varies. The word is ophan, and making that plural be ophanim in Hebrew. And I'm not a Hebrew. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but
that's okay. You've got one sitting to your left.
Exactly.
So we're
You're
okay.
good. So.
I'm good. That's how it looks in English. So I'm an American. I'll just mispronounce it. But when you actually look at the description, and this is actually something that Mike Heiser's covered extensively well before I even got into it, but when you look at the words that are used, there are words that could be used for things like one of the big things that ancient aliens will say. Well, the eyes around the rims of the wheels, those are probably windows or portholes or something. Why wouldn't they just say window? There's words for that in Hebrew, and I put them in that book to show, like, Ezekiel could have just said this, and it would have made a lot more sense. Now, there have been...
There's sort of an underlying assumption on the part of us 21st century readers of this text written, 2,500, 2,600 years ago, that Ezekiel was clearly just too primitive and stupid to know what he was seeing.
And then if that's the case, then the whole message is lost. Like, if it was aliens and they came to Ezekiel and wanted to tell him something, well, clearly they failed because he got the wrong message. He thought it was God and he thought it was, angels, and so clearly the aliens screwed
we
up.
accidentally started a whole religion.
What a big waste of time. So, like, it just doesn't, it holds no water. What makes a lot more sense is that Ezekiel didn't see things the way that we see them today. He didn't see things through a 21st century American materialistic scientific worldview. He was in a completely different area of the world, completely different time, 2,600 years ago, completely different situation, and the things that he saw would have actually had a completely different meaning to him at the time in Babylonian captivity, because actually the things he saw was common in that area than how we read it today. Now, some people have looked, other scholars throughout time have looked at that and said that, well, the Ophanim are a class of angel, and it very well could be. I mean, it even says that the spirits of the cherubim were in the wheels as well.
I know in Jewish angelology, they consider the Ophanim to be a class of angel.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and it likely is, and of course the wheels show up in other places like Daniel, and the cherubim themselves, they show up in other places all throughout Scripture and in Revelation. All right, so it's something that we're going to have to keep our eyes on, like I've said throughout this episode. Like I've said before, we're going to have to keep our eyes on all of these things, and one of the best ways to keep up to date on this stuff is just by following Into the Multiverse. Follow Skywatch TV. You can check out Justin Fall and Wes Fall's new film, Higher Entities, in which they recently did 3 or 4 interviews for Skywatch TV on that, so you can go find those. But we just have to keep our eyes on all the available information on this. And again, like I said before, keep your eyes on Israel, because I believe that this does connect with historical events in Israel. I believe that we've at least, if not proven, I believe that we were able to offer a lot of evidence towards that conclusion in me and Derek Gilbert's book, The Day the Earth Stands Still.